Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to crochet Patty the Panda. With a cuddly charm and an infectious enthusiasm for life's simple pleasures, this furry beacon of positivity is always ready to embark on a journey of joy and shared smiles. This pattern, like all the Kindness Company patterns, is a quick crochet, making it perfect for spreading crochet kindness. Patty can be made in sport, DK, or bulky weight yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today, I'll be crocheting in worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to pick up the matching magical crochet greeting card to make an adorable gift that your friends and family will love. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with Patty the Panda, and we're going to begin with his eyes, and we're going to be working with this black yarn. So the first thing we need to do is we need to tie a slip knot and then chain 5 stitches. So let's review how to tie a slip knot. All right, so let's review how to start with a slip knot and chains. So the way I like to tie my slip knots is I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to take the tail part and about 5 inches or so of that tail part, and I'm going to fold it behind the working yarn. I also like to pinch my fingers inside of that loop. So I'll put my index in middle, or I can wrap my pinky and my really whatever fingers you want to wrap inside. So once you've crossed that behind and then you've made a little bit of a loop, we're going to fold that tail over and wedge it in between some of those fingers we have inside of the loop. Then when we've done that, our goal is to pull this strand through without pulling all of the tail through as well, because that's just going to tie a regular knot. We're going to use this loop we formed to sort of pinch the tail into a loop that we can tighten or loosen as we need. So to do that, I'm going to grab both the working yarn and that tail, and then I'm going to use my fingers to sort of pull that tail end through, and then by tightening both the working yarn and the tail and then pulling that loop, I form a slip knot. Now the reason I like to tie them this way is because they tighten whenever you pull the tail, but they don't tighten whenever you pull the working yarn. So that way whenever you start tensioning, it's not going to pull your loop really tightly closed. And then when we weave this tail in, it secures that first stitch. It also allows us to tighten that stitch too. So if we add a lot of stitches to this slip knot that we've tied, we have the ability to tighten it after the fact. So let's practice that one last time so we can just pull that slip knot out. And again, we're going to take about 5 inches or so of our tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn and bring it and wedge it in between our fingers that are inside that loop we've made. And then by pulling that working yarn and that loop through, can tie our slip knot. Once we've got it tied, then we're ready to go ahead and begin chaining. So we can grab our crochet hook, put it inside of that slip knot we've tied, and then by tugging the tail, we can tighten it down on our hook. Then we're ready to start chaining however many stitches we need to chain for our pattern. So to chain, it's a lot like a slip stitch. We're just going to take our working yarn and yarn over and pull it straight through and up. And the goal when we chain is to make these loops all the same size. So try not to make them too tight, but also try not to pull them up too long or you'll have a really loose chain. Alright, that's how we'll start when we tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we have our slip knot tied, we are ready to go ahead and get started here on round 1. So if you look up at the top left hand corner, you'll notice that I have the pattern here and it will track with us as we continue working. So feel free to reference the written pattern if you like, but I'm going to have it up here in the top left for our convenience. Alright, so if you look, we need to start by CH5, which means to chain 5 stitches. So to chain, we're going to take our hook and we're going to go underneath our yarn, so yarn over our hook, and we're going to draw through the loop on our hook and up to form our first chain. So a quick reminder, this loop here on your hook doesn't count as a stitch. So right now we have one chain done. So we're going to continue chaining. There's 2. Here's 3. And I sort of keep moving my fingers up the chain as I continue chaining. 4. And 5. Once we have our first 5 chain, we're ready to go ahead and start working back down the chain. And we're going to begin by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the second chain from our hook. So remember, the one on our hook doesn't count. So 1, 2. We're going to go through that chain. And I like to go through the chain, so I'm grabbing both sides. So there's 3 little loops. I'm going to be getting both the middle loop and the loop closest to this side of the work. Alright, so now that I have that chain, I'm going to go ahead and single crochet. So to do that, I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to yarn under, meaning I'm going to put the yarn under my hook, and I'm going to draw it through that chain. And then to finish off my single crochet, I'm going to yarn over and draw through the remaining loops on my hook. So that's the first. We need to make 2 more single crochet stitches. So I'm going to go through my next chain. So remember, I'm going to get both sides of that there. Yarn under, draw up a loop. Then yarn over and draw through 2. Then 1 more single crochet stitch. Yarn under and draw up. Then yarn over and draw through. So that takes care of our first 3 single crochet stitches. Then in the last stitch, which is technically our slip knot, we're going to place 3 single crochet stitches all together. So there's 1. I'm going to go through that same space again and make my second. And on this third one, I sort of flip my work over a little bit and place that 3rd stitch. Alright, now that I have all 3 of those single crochet stitches in that slip knot, I'm going to pull my slip knot tail to tighten that stitch up. And then I'm going to work this tail in as I work up the other side of the chain. So I'm going to continue working by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 chain stitches. So I'm going to go through here, single crochet, I'm going to go through the next stitch. So there are my 2 single crochet stitches. And then in the last stitch, the last chain that we have, we're going to place an INC, which is to put 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. So we'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in that last chain, and then a second single crochet stitch. And that wraps up this round. So to close off, we need to slip stitch to the first stitch that we created. So to do that, we're going to go through that stitch, yarn under and draw through a loop, and then continue drawing until we have just 1 loop on our hook. Then we're also going to chain 1, and that sets us up to start in on round 2. So round 2, our first stitch is an increase. So we're going to go into that first stitch of the round and place 2 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches, 1 in the next 2 stitches of this round. And then in the next 3 single crochet stitches, we need to place an increase. So that's 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. There's my first increase. And my second. And there's my last. Then we're going to place 2 single crochet stitches, one in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then 2 increases. So 2 stitches. Here's my second increase. And then we're going to slip stitch to the chain 1 that we made to join. That wraps up the crochet portion of this. Let's go ahead and cut a tail. We're going to need this to sew the eye onto the panda's body. So I cut about 6 inches of a tail, and then I'm going to take my hook and that loop on it and pull that loop long until I pull the yarn all the way out. Then I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down by pulling the working yarn to form a knot. Then if you worked this tail in, you can give it a trim. If you didn't, we're going to want to weave it in. So let's go ahead and practice weaving it in together. I'm going to thread it through my tapestry needle and then sew through a couple of the stitches here on the back side of the eye to weave it in. Once you've woven it in, you can trim it close. And then we're going to go ahead and add the safety eye and eye detail while we've got our eye here. So go ahead and grab your safety eye. I'm using these shiny black ones here. I'm going to place the safety eye sort of where that slip knot was. So in that same kind of space. So kind of towards one end of this oval shape that we have. And once you've got it placed through, you can go ahead and snap the back on. And then let's go ahead and sew the white embellishment on. So I'm going to sew this white embellishment like this is the right eye. So I'm going to go around the right hand side. When we repeat making this eye patch, the other eye needs to have it around the left side. So it's the left eye. Alright, so we're going to grab a little scrap of white yarn, 6 inches or so. And then we're going to take that white yarn and thread it through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then we need to tie a knot at this end of that yarn. So the way I like to do it is I like to hold it against my needle and then wrap 4 times around my needle itself. And then slide all those wraps down over the eye and keep sliding until I've slid the wraps down and tightened them into a knot. Then I'm going to trim this extra tail here on the other side of the knot. And we're ready to go ahead and begin sewing the white of our panda's eyes. So I like to start here at the bottom, so I'm going to come up through the back of the eye and get as close to the eye as I can. And then we're going to just sew around the eye. So I like to send my needle down directly at the top of the eye and then kind of help that yarn go the way I want by holding it and then tightening. But you can see that forms the white on the outside of the eye. So once you've got that sewn, we're going to tie a knot at the back here. And the way I like to do that is I loop my yarn over and tie a surface knot is what I like to call these. So I loop my yarn, then catch just a little of the fabric as I sew up through that loop. And then holding the loop close to the fabric of the body, I can tighten it into a knot. Then once it's tied, I can trim and we don't have to worry about weaving any of those ends in because that's just going to hide out whenever we sew it onto the panda's body. Alright, so we need to get one more eye made, and remember when you're making this eye, we want the white to go around the left side. So let's get the other eye made. Alright, so as you can see, I have both eyes made, so let's go ahead and get started on the body. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started on Patty the Panda's body. And we're going to be working with white yarn and need to start off by forming a magic ring. So let's review how to tie a magic ring. Okay, so let's review how to tie a magic loop. So to start, we're going to get about 5 inches of our tail of our working yarn. And then we need to form a bit of a finger guns here with our left hand. And then we're going to lay that tail so that the tail part of it is down over the bottom digit of our left hand. And then we're going to take our thumb and pinch that tail so it's on securely to our index and our middle finger. Then we're going to take the working yarn, and that's the yarn that's attached to the ball of yarn. And we're going to wrap it around the back side of those 2 fingers really close to the top digit. So I'm just wrapping around the back. And then I'm going to continue by pulling it behind my thumb. So I just made a big loop around my fingers. Then we're going to wrap a second time, but this time we're going to go around the lower digit on the back side of our left hand. And then one last time we're going to push that working yarn behind our thumb on our left hand. Then when we've done that, we can take our crochet hook and we're going to flip our left hand over so we can see those 2 loops that we formed. And then taking our crochet hook underneath that top loop, we're going to use the hook to grab that bottom loop and pull it underneath the top loop. Then when we've done that, we're going to flip our hands back over away from our body. And then bring our hook and our left hand together. So you can see my fingers on my right hand are touching the back side of the hand with the loops on it. Then I'm going to take my right index finger and thumb, and I'm going to grab those loops that are on the back side of my hand. So the one on the hook and the one on my hand. Once I've got those pinched rather securely, I'm going to let go with my thumb and then slide all of those loops very carefully off of my hand. Once I've done that, you can see I have my tail. Again, that's not attached to the ball of yarn. And then my working yarn. I'm going to move my tail out of my way, kind of just swing it around clockwise to the 12 o'clock position. And then I'm going to grab my working yarn and begin tensioning it by laying it over my left index finger and then grabbing the remaining yarn with my pinky and my ring finger. Then we need to be able to tension our yarn, so we're going to have to let go with our right hand. But before we do, we need to make sure we're pinching the loop that we've tied and our tail together. So if you look, I like to kind of pinch so that it sandwiches that working yarn. So I'm just going to pinch both that loop and that tail together here. And then when I've done that, I can let go with my right hand, and pulling my index finger up lets me tighten that loop on my hook. Then to lock our magic loop or magic ring in place, we can yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. And that locks everything in place. You can let go with your left hand. You can even stop tensioning if you want. This loop isn't going to go anywhere now that we've locked it in place. One last thing that I like to do before I get started is I'll take the tail. You can see it's sort of threaded through the loop that we've made. I like to take this tail and pull it out so that I can go ahead and get started placing single crochet inside. Before you begin, we also need to make sure we are working both in the loop and over the tail of the magic ring as well. Alright, so we are ready to make our first single crochet stitch. Alright, so now that I've got my magic ring tied, I'm ready to begin round 1, and we need to place 8 single crochet inside of the MR or magic ring. So remember, when we're working in our magic ring, we're going to be working in both the ring and also over the tail of the ring itself. So let's go ahead and begin by forming our first single crochet stitch. So we're going to take our hook and we're going to go underneath both the ring and the tail, and then yarn under and draw up a loop. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through both of the loops on our hook. I also like to tighten this first stitch by scooting it over to the right a little bit. And then I'm going to mark this stitch as well because it's the first stitch of our round and we're working in the round. Alright, so that's one single crochet stitch. We need to continue adding them until we have 8 stitches total. So we're going to do that same thing again, go underneath both the loop and the tail, yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both. And we're going to keep adding single crochet stitches until we have 8 total. Alright, there's my first 8 single crochet stitches, and you can double check that you have the right amount by turning your work on its side and counting these little V shapes. So I have 8 total. And to finish off round 1, we're going to pull the magic ring tail to close that round. Which gets us ready for round 2, where we're going to INC or increase in each stitch. So to do that in the round, we're going to take our stitch marker out, and our first increase is going to go in that same place that our marker was just in. So we're going to slip through both sides of that stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both, and of course mark that stitch. And then add another single crochet stitch in that same space because it is an increase. And then we're going to continue increasing around until we have increased in each of the 8 stitches from round 1. Alright, so I have finished increasing in each stitch, and I'm ready to move on to round 3, but before I do, I like to give my magic ring tail one final tug, and then trim it short. You can get rid of anything you've trimmed, because I find it gets in the way as I continue working around. Alright, so we're ready for round 3, where we've got a new skill we need to learn, which is how to read these parentheses that have shown up. So the top left here, you can see we have actually 2 sets of parentheses. And the one at the very end is telling us how many stitches we need to have at the end of the round. So in this situation, we need to have 24 stitches when we're all said and done. The first set, however, has some instructions on the inside, and then a multiplication sign and a number outside. In this case, it's times 8. So inside of those parentheses, what that means when you translate it is that we need to repeat what's in there in the order it appears 8 times to have that many stitches at the end of the round. So let's dive right in and try that out. One repetition of that would be to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of our round, and then to increase, and that's 1 repetition of those parentheses. We need to do what's inside of them another 7 times for a total of 8 to have 24 stitches all the way around. So let's continue repeating that sequence of 1 single crochet, increase, until we are all the way around round 3. Alright, so that wraps up round 3, and we are ready to move on to round 4, where we've got another parentheses that we need to repeat. which is to put one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So here's my first, and one in the next, and then an increase in the stitch after. And then we're going to repeat that sequence 7 more times for a total of 8 all the way around. Alright, so that wraps up round 4. We're ready for round 5, where we're going to start off by putting one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then we've got our next parentheses pattern to repeat, which is to put one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches, and then an increase afterwards. And that wraps up that repetition, so we need to repeat that 6 more times for a total of 7, which will take us to our last 2 stitches of the round. Alright, that takes me to my last 2 stitches here, so I'm going to put one single crochet in both to wrap up this round. And we're ready for round 6, where we need to put one single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. So there's my first 4, and then I'm going to increase. And then repeat that sequence another 7 times for a total of 8 all the way around. Alright, so that's round 6 done. I'm ready for round 7, where we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches of the round. Alright, there are my first 7, then we're going to increase afterwards. And that's 1 repetition of that. We need to do that 5 more times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 7. So for rounds 8 and 9, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in each of the 54 stitches around. So that's 2 rounds of just regular old single crochet. I will catch you back here whenever I've wrapped up round 9. Alright, so I just wrapped up round 9, and we have a lot to do before we continue crocheting. So let's go ahead and take our hook and pull that last stitch up really long and then set it aside, because we need to attach the eyes, and they're going to go between rounds 2 and 6 and about 2 stitches apart. So before we attach, first let's point out the front and back of our work. So the side we've been looking at this entire time, unless yours has begun to kind of cup like this is the right side, and you can see it has all of these neat and tidy X shapes. And the other side, the dead giveaway here is our magic ringtail, but then also you can see the stitches have more of a line going through them. So this is the inside of our work. That's the side that's going to stay hidden when we're done with the plush itself. So we're going to be attaching the eyes to this side here. So let's go ahead and grab both of those eyes. And remember, we've got the little whites that are on the outside, and we need to make sure to attach them the correct way. So the safety eye little bit that we have is going to get pushed through the fabric of our work and kind of help hold the eye in place. And they're going to be attached at a little bit of an angle too. So I'm going to just push the eyes through and take a look and see if I like where they're positioned. And I do, I like that. So then we're going to take the tails left over from when we fastened off on the eyes, thread them through our tapestry needle, and then we're just going to sew from front to back, attaching these eyes on. So be really careful not to accidentally snag your working yarn as you're sewing, but we're just going to attach these eyes. Alright, so I've sewn all the way around this first eye patch, and I'm ready to tie a knot to secure it. So I'm just going to tie another surface knot. Again, loop the yarn over the surface of my work, snag a little of the work itself, and draw up through that loop. And then I'm going to trim this, but I don't need to weave it in because it's just going to hide inside of the panda's body. So now I've got that attached. I'm ready to attach the other eye on the other side in the exact same way. Alright, so that is the eyes attached. So then we are ready to continue crocheting, but we actually have a color change here right on the horizon. So the last stitch of round 9, we actually need to pull out. So we're just going to pull that stitch out because we need to finish the stitch in our new color. So let's go ahead and do most of that single crochet stitch, the last one of round 9. So we're going to go yarn under and draw up a loop, and then we need to pull these two loops through with our new color, which is black. So then let's cut maybe 4 inches or so of that white yarn, and then we can switch over to our black yarn. And I like to make it so that the black yarn is the same length tail-wise as the white yarn. And then wrap that black yarn around my hook and draw through those last 2 stitches in the new color. Then we can start tensioning that black yarn, and we can tighten that stitch down by pulling the white tail and the black tail. And then we're going to weave these tails in as we go for the first couple of stitches because we need to make sure that they stay secure. So we're ready for round 10. And round 10 we're going to be working in the back loop only, the BLO. So as we've been working around, we've been going through both sides of our stitch. We've been going through both the front and the back, which is this right here. Now we're only going to be working through the back of our stitch. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to slip just under the back side of that stitch and then lay my 2 tails over the hook itself. And then I'm going to make my single crochet stitch like normal, yarning under and then yarning over and drawing through both. I'm also going to mark the stitch, even though it's fairly obvious this is the first stitch, well, with it being a different color and all, we're going to go ahead and mark it anyway. Just a good habit to stay on top of. So then we're going to continue working these tails in for the next 2 stitches. So in our back loop only. Let's work them in one more. Alright, so those tails are worked in, so we can just leave them here inside of our piece. I just draped them over the back of my piece. And they're going to hide out inside whenever we stuff the panda's body. Alright, we're going to continue working around in the back loops only. Alright, that wraps up round 10. Round 11 is exactly the same. So we're going to be working in the back loops only of the previous round. Alright, so that's round 11 done. For round 12, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in both loops, so not just the back loop now, all the way around. Alright, so that's round 12 done. We're ready for round 13 where we're back in the back loops only and working just one single crochet stitch in every back loop all the way around. Alright, so that wraps up round 13. For round 14, we're going to begin decreasing. So we need to start by placing one single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches, and that's through both sides of the stitch, not just the back loop. Alright, so there's my first 7 single crochet. Then we need to do a decrease. So to do that, we're going to go through the next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then go through the next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then draw through all 3 loops left on our hook. And that will decrease the amount of stitches that we have in this round. That's why it's called a decrease. So we're going to keep that pattern up by making 7 single crochet and decreasing. We're going to do that another 5 times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, so that wraps up round 14. For round 15, we're back in the back loops only. And we're going to continue decreasing by placing one single crochet stitch in the next 6 back loops. And then we're going to make a back loop only decrease, which is just like a regular decrease, but we're just going to go through the back loops this time. And then we're going to repeat that sequence another 5 times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, that's round 15 done. For round 16, we're back in the regular part of a stitch, not just the back loops, where we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches. And then decreasing. And then just like before, repeating that sequence another 5 times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, that's round 16 done. Back to round 17 in the back loops only. We're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 4 back loops. And then a back loops only decrease. And then repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6 all the way around. Round 18, we're back in the regular stitch, so not just the back loops. We're going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then a decrease. And then just like before, repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, round 19, we're back in the back loop only, where we're going to place the first 2 single crochet stitches in the back loops of the next 2 stitches. And then a back loop only decrease. And then repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, that's round 19 done. So we on to round 20, back in the regular crochet stitch, not the back loops only. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch. And then decrease. And just like most of the rounds beforehand, we're going to repeat that sequence for 5 more times, all the way around. Alright, so before we complete our last round of single crochet, let's go ahead and stuff the body here. So I'm going to pull this last loop long. And then as I'm stuffing, I'm going to be really careful not to accidentally stuff my working yarn or this loop on the inside of the body. So let's go ahead and grab our stuffing. Making sure to kind of stretch it so that it goes to the outsides of all of the back black part here. And then of course making sure I'm not pushing the eyes at a strange angle. I'm going to add a little more stuffing. Alright, and he kind of flattens out a little bit like this, which is totally normal because of the color change that we had here. Alright, and we are ready to finish off our last round of crochet here on the body. So let's go ahead and put our hook back through the loop that we drew up long and drop back down. And then for round 21, we're just going to decrease in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so that's my last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off, and to do that I'm going to take my stitch marker out, and I'm going to slip stitch to the place that it was just in. So again, to do that we're going to yarn under and draw up a loop, and then draw that loop through the last loop on our hook. Then we'll cut a tail 6 inches or so, and pull that last loop all the way out and tighten down. And then we're going to sew through the remaining 6 stitches on the body here to close up the last round. So thread that tail we just cut through your tapestry needle. And then we're going to be going through the front loops now. It's a little hard to see with this black yarn, but when we worked the back loop, we grabbed that one here in the back. Now we're only going to grab the one here in the front. And we're just going to whip stitch through each of those 6 remaining stitches, just the front loops. Once we've sewn through all 6 of those stitches, we're going to pull to cinch that closed, and then tie another surface knot by wrapping the yarn over the surface of our work, which you really kind of can't see with this black yarn. And then sew up through that loop that we just made, and hold it close to tie a knot. And then we're going to weave this in by sewing it down into the body and out through just any random place. You can unthread your tapestry needle, and then by pulling what we just sewed tight and snipping close, that weaves the tail in. Alright, so next up, let's go ahead and get the hair on the panda attached. So we're going to attach onto the back loop rounds, and we're going to attach by going through with our panda's face down, and I'm going to attach onto this lowest back loop only round that was left behind. So if you look, there's a little bit of a jog between these rounds. I'm going to start on this very lowest ones, the lowest white stitch. So I'm going to push my hook up through that and then grab my black yarn. And then we're going to fasten on to this by making a little bit of a tail off to the left here, and then wrapping our yarn around our hook and pulling through that first loop. Then we're ready to start tensioning our yarn, and then I'm going to work this tail in as I go. So to make the hair, we're going to chain 4 stitches and then single crochet in the next loop left behind. And we're going to keep repeating that chain 4, single crochet in the next loop, we're going to do that all the way around. And the way that's going to look is we're going to keep going around on this lowest loop, and then here where we reach that jog, there's another round of those loops left behind. So we're going to just keep working around on this round, and then from this round here we're going to jump up to the next round of back loops, this one here. And we're just going to keep working around and around until we get to the last loop left behind. It's about right here. So I will see you back here whenever I am at this last loop, and I will show you how to fasten off all of the hair. Alright, so I am just about to wrap up the last little ruffle of hair here on Patty the Panda. And the way we're going to fasten off is I've already changed my 4 stitches, and I'm going to go through my last loop left here on Patty's body and make my single crochet stitch. Alright, now that I have that single crochet stitch made, we're going to slip stitch in the same place that we placed that single crochet stitch. So again, just go through, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then just draw through. And then we can weave this tail in by cutting, maybe 5 inches or so. And then pulling that last stitch out. We can tighten it down and then thread it through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then just sew it into the body and out through a random place inside of the hair that we've just made. Then once you've got it weaved in, you can trim it short. I'm also going to trim the tail from when I fastened on. And that wraps up the body. Alright, so next up we're going to make Patty the Panda's snout. So we're going to be using this white yarn, and we're going to start by tying a slip knot and then chaining 6 stitches. And then once we've got those 6 stitches chained, we're going to start in the second chain from the hook and place a single crochet stitch. And then we're going to continue single crocheting in the next 3 chain. Then we get to your slip knot. We're going to place 3 single crochet stitches inside of it. So here's my first, and my second, and then my last I'm going to kind of swing around the other side of the chain. Then we're going to continue working down the other side of the chain by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 chain stitches. Then we're going to increase in the last chain. And then we're going to slip stitch that first chain that we had and chain 1 stitch to finish off that round. I'm also going to mark this chain that I've made because we're going to come back and join to it next round. Alright, so we're ready for round 2. We're going to start off by placing 1 increase in the first stitch of the round. Then we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. Then we're going to increase in the 3 stitches that kind of flip us around the other side. So here's my first increase, my second, and my third. Then we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. Then 2 increases in the next 2 stitches, so 1 increase in the next, and an increase in the last. And then we're going to slip stitch to the chain 1 that we made last round. And then chain 1 and mark that chain 1. Then we're ready for round 3, which is our last round, where we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so that's my last stitch. So to finish off, we're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 1 that we made last round. And that wraps up the snout, the crochet portion of it at least. So let's go ahead and fasten off by cutting a long tail to sew with, because we're going to use this to attach it to the body. And then since we slip stitched, we can just pull that tail all the way through and tighten down. And then let's go ahead and get this embroidered and attached to the body. So I'm going to take the tail from our slip knot and sort of just tuck it inside of the snout here. And then I'm going to take a little of the black yarn that I used to crochet the body so far, and I'm going to use that to embroider on the nose. So let's get that threaded through our tapestry needle, and then tie a knot here at the end. And then to get the nose embroidered, I like to kind of divide the snout in half. So this center chain is the middle, and then these rows up top are the top half. So I'm going to start by placing a long straight stitch centered directly in the middle of the snout. And I'm going to sew that up basically to the top of the snout here. And then I'm going to sew kind of like a triangle shape here by starting in the left corner and sewing it down through that same stitch we came up through. And I'll repeat here on the other side. And then we need to fill in the rest of the nose. And the way I like to do that is I just sort of kind of go side to side, adding stitches, always going down through that same stitch I came up through. And that just fills the nose in. And I'll repeat here on the other side. And then I like to clean up the top of the nose where all those little stitches sort of run by sending just a stitch along the top to kind of cap or hide where each of those stitches go into the fabric. So just one straight stitch along the top here. I usually sew this one fairly tightly too. And you see that kind of hides where all those stitches come together. Then we also need to sew a little line down to be the mouth. So I like to go through where it came up. And we're going to just sew one straight stitch, kind of just straight down, which makes his mouth. All right, now that we have the nose and mouth sewn, I'm going to flip my snout inside out, and then I'm going to tie a surface knot. And then I'm going to trim this black tail, but I'm not going to cut it all the way off because it's going to hide against the body when I sew the snout on. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this attached. And it's going to go right between his eyes and then also kind of centered on his body, just like this. But let's put a little stuffing behind here first before we begin sewing. I'm going to start with just a little pinch. And then we're going to just sew this straight on. So thread the tail that we cut from when we made the snout through your embroidery needle. And then we're ready to attach. So we're just going to whip stitch this directly to the body here. Alright, so I have sewn all the way around and gotten the snout attached, so I'm going to go ahead and tie a surface knot here and weave the tail in by sewing it directly inside the body. Alright, and that is the snout sewn and attached. Alright, next up we're going to make the ears. So we're going to start with this white color that we've been using so far and begin by making a magic ring. And then for that first round, we're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of that magic ring. But before we finish this last single crochet stitch, we actually need to change colors. So I'm going to pull the tail for my magic ring to make it a little easier to hold this stitch half done. And then we're going to switch to our black color. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a little bit of a tail with this white yarn. And then just like we did with our last color change on the body, I'm going to make the black the same length as my white tail. Wrap around with the new color and pull through that last single crochet stitch. And then of course tighten down both the white and black tail and tighten that magic ring all the way. Alright, that sets us up for round 2, which is the last round of the ear, where we're going to just increase in each stitch. I'm also going to work these 2 tails in for these stitches too. So I'm going to go through that first stitch of the round, lay my tails over the top, then yarn under, and make my single crochet stitch like normal, just working those tails in as I go. So we're just going to increase in each stitch, working the tails in as we continue working around. Alright, so that's my last stitch. I'm ready to fasten off, so I'm going to slip stitch to the first stitch of this round. And then cut a tail to sew with. Then pull that last slip stitch through and tighten down. Then I weaved in these tails so I can just trim them. They're already woven in. But I'm going to need to weave in the magic ring tail left over. So I'm going to go ahead and thread that through my tapestry needle here. And I'm just going to weave it into some of the white and black stitches and then trim. Alright, so that is one of the ears done. We need to make one more and then we can get them attached to the body. Alright, I have both of the ears done, so let's go ahead and attach them to Patty's body here. So they're going to attach sort of pinched at the bottoms and then just next to where the little ruffles start for his hair. So let's start with one of the ears. We'll thread that tail through our tapestry needle. And then I'm going to cinch the bottom by sewing through one of the stitches close to the bottom, and then again just kind of help cinch it into the shape that we want it to be in. And then to attach, I'm just going to attach it by sewing a couple of stitches into the white part of the body. And then through some of the stitches of the bottom of the ear. Which attaches it. Then once it's sewn in and attached, I'm kind of inside of the little ruffles of the hair, which it's a good place to hide this knot we're about to tie. I'm going to tie a surface knot. And then weave my tail into the black part of the body. And then trim. And then we need to repeat that same process on the other side. Alright, that's both ears attached. Alright, next up let's make the arms. So we're going to be working with this black color again. And we'll start by forming a magic ring. Alright, once you've got your magic ring formed for round 1, all we need to do is put 6 single crochet stitches inside. Don't forget to mark that first stitch like I almost did. Alright, once you're done with round 1, you can pull the tail. And then for rounds 2 through 5, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. We're sort of making just a little tube shape. So I will see you back here whenever I have finished round 5. Alright, so I have finished my 5th round of single crochet here on the arm, and I'm ready to fasten off. So I'm going to take my marker out, and I'm going to slip stitch to the stitch it was just in. And then we're going to cut a tail to sew with, pull that last stitch all the way through, and tighten. And then I'm going to trim the magic ring tail as well. And that wraps up the first arm, so we need to make the second one, and then we can get them attached. Alright, I have both arms crocheted and I am ready to attach them to the body. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my tapestry needle with one of the tails from one of the arms. And then we're not going to be stuffing the arms. We're actually going to kind of sew through both layers of the fabric as we attach them. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Patty here. And I'm going to sew them so that they are angled down and next to his eye. So to attach, I'm going to just whip stitch through the body and then through both layers of the arm. Also probably 3 stitches. So there's the arm attached to the top, and if you'd like, you can tack it down so that it stays close to the body. I'm going to leave it so it's posable, because I think it looks really rather cute. So I'm going to go ahead and first send my yarn down into the body and then out into some of the black of the back side of the body here. And then hide my surface knot inside of the darker color here on Patty's body. And then weave my tail in so that it comes up through some of the black of the body as well. Once it's woven in, you can trim. And that is one of the arms attached. Let's go ahead and repeat on the other side. Alright, and there are the arms attached. Alright, last thing that we need to make are the feet, or the legs. So we're going to start just like we have with everything so far, with some black yarn and a magic ring. Alright, once you've got your magic ring formed, we're going to place 8 single crochet stitches inside. And then don't forget to mark that first stitch that we make. Once you've got all 8 stitches placed, you can pull the tail of the magic ring to close off round 1. Then we're ready for round 2, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then repeat that sequence another 3 times for a total of 4 all the way around. Alright, that's the end of round 2. I'm going to pull my magic ring tail one last time and then give it a trim just so it's not in my way. As I work round 3, which is the last round, where all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 12 stitches from round 2. Alright, that's my last stitch of round 3, so to fasten off, we'll take that stitch marker out and slip stitch to the same stitch that it was just in. And then leave a tail to sew with. 6 inches or so ought to do it. Then pull that last stitch through and tighten down. And then when we sew the foot onto the body, we're going to kind of flatten it, so I'm going to go ahead and just get that out of the way. And then we need to make one more, and then we can get it attached and finish Patty. Alright, I have both of my feet crocheted, so I'm ready to attach them to the body. So I already flattened both of them, and I want to make sure that we flatten it so that the tail is at the very corner of the foot. And then let's go ahead and get the tapestry needle threaded with the tail. And then just like with the arms, we're going to attach so that we sew through both layers of the fabric. So then let's get them positioned onto the body. I'm going to have mine kind of be around the bottom, sort of underneath where the eyes are. And then just like with the arms, we're going to sew through a little of the fabric of the body. And then through both layers of the fabric of the leg. And then just continue tacking the leg on. Alright, so there's my last stitch on the foot. I'm going to come back up through some of the darker colored part of the body here. And then once again use that darker colored part of the body to hide the surface knot I'm going to tie. And then weave that tail in. And then we're going to repeat with the other foot on the other side of the body. All right, I have both of the legs attached, so that wraps up this tutorial.